Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention, maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back. A quick intro here for you. I don't want to keep you long. My next guest is awesome. It's that time. My book is almost out. I'm going to be publishing this podcast on Thursday, February 26th, 2026. And my book, End of the Road, Inside the War on Truckers, comes out next month, March 24th. It's less than a month away. We're almost there. I've spun the podcast back up. As you know, I was really busy for a couple months, didn't get that many out. But I got another great guest here for you. Twitter personality, YouTuber, trucker, just got out of the business, just sold his Peterbilt after a fairly lengthy and substantial career in the business. A really excellent student of economics. Takes no crap from the government, takes no crap from any narratives, a realist in the truest sense of the word. Mr. Axel behind the Financial Physics YouTube show and Twitter handle. Great guy. We had an awesome conversation. I think he was born to do this, and I'm going to have to get him back on. But I really hope you guys enjoy this. If you've never heard of him, you're going to go follow him after this because he's a real mensch. We talk about everything from trucking to electrical generators to economics to all the scams going on in the trucking industry and everything in between. He's fantastic. You guys are going to love it. And so without any further ado, let's get to the show. But, make sure if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, corrections, or hate mail, I'd love to hear from you guys. You can get a hold of me directly via my own personal email address, gordylocks@protonmail.com. If you go through the show notes, you'll figure out all the ways to get a hold of Axel directly yourselves if you want to talk to him, which I recommend you do. He's a great guy. He responds to people. He loves the discourse. And go and buy my book. I spent the last year and a half writing it and then some with all of the research I've been doing for the last few years. And all the crashes, all the nonsense we just saw last night during President Trump's State of the Union address, that he sees us. He presented the story of Delilah Coleman, a young lady who was permanently disabled as the result of an illegal migrant from India crashing into her car. We have to get rid of these guys. It's not because they're bad guys or their countries are bad or whatever. They're just, the whole system by which they're brought here is compromised, and the whole point of it is to put low-paid people that don't know what they're doing on our highways, and there's a significant social cost to that. It has to stop. Delilah's father, Marcus, is going to be coming on the podcast soon. I appeared with Marcus on my friend Batya Unger Sargon's show recently, along with my friend Justin Super Trucker Martin. I'll throw a link to that video in the show notes. You guys can go check that out. But yeah, things are moving. My book might be, it's behind already. The government is really seeing what's going on here, finally, thank God. And they're looking to improve things. So yeah, Axel and I discuss all of that stuff and more. So let's get you guys to the show, man. Mr. Axel by Financial Physics. All right, g'day everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Voice of Gord podcast. I am Gord, and this is my voice. The other voice you're about to hear is pretty interesting dude I bumped into on Twitter, like so many of my guests are. He runs a very informative and entertaining sort of video project on there. He's always posting selfie videos talking about economics and politics and many other things under the sun. a fellow trucker, or at least he was. He just sold his equipment here a month ago. We're going to talk about why and his career in trucking and many other things. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Axel from Financial Physics. Sir.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Good to be with you. Thank you very much for having me. It's a nice to be invited.
Mm. I've been trying to get you on the show here for a few months now, but life is what it is. We're all busy.
Yeah. I'm also building a house too, so I mean, like that's not helping. That's absorbed a bunch of my time plus everything else that I've had going on. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, I work for a construction company now. Full
Hmm.
disclosure, people like to bug me about this, but I'm always very forward about it. I've spent most of my life as a truck driver, but I also dabble in construction. And since I completed finishing my book, I'm helping a buddy and his company out, and we are doing a total gut and refurb on a guest house, an
Nice.
apothecary slash greenhouse, and the main house for this 100-year-old mansion complex in Cayuga Heights, just outside of Ithaca. Pretty interesting project. So I know what you're saying about construction eating up all your time.
Yeah, it's something else, and we're where we are, where we bought, there isn't any. It's just raw land, so it's just land and trees. So
Where are
the
you
very first
located?
bit is I'm north of Houston, and so Houston, Texas, and if you go north a bit, there's it's all trees. It's all forest out here, and so we had to clear trees first, and now I've got to run electrical conduit. So that's actually this week is actually trenching and putting in electric to the property. I'm like, there's really nothing out there. So what we're doing is we're actually having to actually settle the land because it's not build a house and plug it in. It's like we have to put the infrastructure to even put the house out there. So
Yeah, you didn't just sort of show up with everything pre-built and then have stuff handed to you like, wow, what's that sound like? Huh. I can't think of it. No, I'm looking out my back window of my kitchen right now, and my
hmm
we're kind of on a family compound. There's me and my wife's place, and next
hmm
to it's 26 acres that my brother-in-law owns, and
hmm
he's building a house out there right now. When he's done with that, we're going to be putting an addition on ours. So it's yeah, wall-to-wall construction around here.
Yeah, no, there's always something going on if you've got the space to do it too, and that's kind of where we're at. We're on 5 acres up north a bit, and it'll be another probably 6 to 7 months or so before it'll be inhabitable. Then we'll move in there, and I'll finish the rest of it while we're out there. So it's not that big a thing. Then there's just shorter commute. That way I'm not driving back and forth from Houston. So that's
Right.
30 odd mile commute one way. So
Right. So we mentioned at the beginning here, and as of
yeah,
you advertised in a very viral tweet a few weeks ago about selling your truck. What have you
yeah.
transitioned to doing?
So, well, I've been a generator technician for quite some time. So I fix electric generators and power generators. And so electric isn't, I'm no stranger to electric. I'm not an electrician. I'm not required, in my state, I'm not required to be. I can work on electricity without any kind of special licensing, which is kind of nice. It gives me a lot of freedom. But that's what I do. Plus, I'll probably end up transitioning more than likely into a lot more general contracting as well. Just now that I kind of have the time, and you know how this stuff is. I mean, when you start doing a few things that I never expected to actually build to this level. Like I really never expected. I figured that the trucking industry would be fine, and I could make enough of a living off of it, and that it's how this works, right? You get really good at something, and then you what you're supposed to do is make enough money that you can pay others to do that kind of stuff, and thereby what that creates is the division of labor, which is what has given us this bounty, this massive bounty in the states. Here is the division of labor. Well, since that's breaking down, unfortunately, because the currency's breaking down, well, it means that I'm kind of forced into doing a lot of stuff that I don't really know how to do, but I'm having to learn how to do it. And more importantly, though, I have to learn how to do it right because that'll mess with my OCD if I don't do it right. I mean, like that stuff bugs me. If I do something if I put something in it it's slightly crooked, that'll bug me for weeks. So. I'll probably end up transferring some of that, I guess, raw talent, if you want to call it that, into other sectors. And of course, I know so many general contractors now in just from what we do in generators, because we deal with a lot of people that I'll probably I'll keep myself busy. I mean, I hate to say it like kind of that way to sound vague, but that's kind of what it is right now. Unless we get a big hurricane or something, and then of course everybody calls us, and I need to fix all their stuff. So
Right. Well, so let's talk about generators. Why not? Um, so you're in
sure,
Texas. Texas
yeah,
very famously had a pretty severe winter storm a couple of years ago. Grid went
yeah,
down. There was lots of discussion about that because of the sort of frailty of things, and then the reliance on renewable energy.
hmm
Many people were left without power.
hmm
And then we have the discussion around sort of resiliency or preparedness. I had a gentleman on my podcast here a few months ago who wrote a book called Resilient Citizens, and he has studied preparedness as a sort of matter of government policy, and then pushed it up against cultural perceptions about it. And he's got a PhD from Cornell on this question, and so if we just talk about it sort of like from the point of preppers and being prepared for
hmm
bad weather, maybe a Carrington event where the whole electrical grid goes down, like what happened in Quebec. And
hmm
um, electrical generators are a thing. I don't know very much about them. I have heard that there's certain brands to avoid, and there's some brands that are really good. Um, a friend of mine who's also on Twitter, geez, he's changed his name like 17 times. I think he's going by Spuds Taco now. He uh he put out a pretty good tweet a couple of months ago. He bought an old US military diesel generator that you like tow
hmm
around on a utility trailer behind your
yeah.
pickup. And he reckons that's pretty awesome. So tell us what you know about generators.
Well, without I don't want to make it too boring or anything, and get too industry specific.
No, I'm
I would just
fascinated
tell
about this
somebody,
shit.
I would tell anybody that look for the simplest version that you can. Something that doesn't rely as much on electronics, as little electronics, as few as electronics as you can find. Modern backup generators, a lot of them operate now. They're becoming a bit more. In my opinion, they're becoming a bit too sophisticated. They're getting too much tech put into them. And I get the idea, the theory being that they can centralize problems and analyze from a distance, but that's just more and more stuff that to go wrong that you're putting in. You're kind of defeating the whole purpose of a backup generator. The whole purpose of a backup generator is it's low tech. It's just you're just trying to create electricity to run all of your other stuff. That's the whole point of it. You're not trying to run all the tech in your generator. That's kind of ridiculous to do something like that.
Yeah,
So,
where have
you
I
know,
heard this thing before about unnecessary
yeah,
technology larding down
yeah.
existing proven technology?
There's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot to be said for some of the old school stuff when it comes to that. This is particularly, I mean, look, we just saw this with cars, where I guess it was Rand. No, it wasn't. It was Thomas Massey that pushed that issue about the auto stop start thing, and the shut the car off from space if the car doesn't like what you're doing. Like this is, and of course, none of that's ever going to be abused, I'm sure.
Oh, of course not.
But it's like, yeah, this is kind of the thing. This is why we're seeing. In fact, I just saw somebody who posted this. He was talking about how that his young kids that are like 12 and 13 they're not as enamored with AI as the adults are, and they're not. They kind of want more reality, and I understand this completely, absolutely, because I mean, I think most of AI is crap. And I think that there's a lot more people that are starting to see that, like, yeah, movies aren't the same, TV's not like none of this stuff is the same. It allows for the laziest writing, it allows for the laziest directing, and the laziest of acting too, frankly. And so all of that tech is just kind of unnecessary. It's more necessary to actually have real connection. So speaking of connection, going back to the generator thing, yeah, you know, you're you want to have something simple. You want the simplest version of itself. So I mean, And there's a few out there that I like and I don't like. But yeah, I mean, like with what your friend bought, which is a giant diesel generator, that's probably like a 50 plus kilowatt machine. I mean, that's enough to power two houses full time, easily. Some of those bigger machines are upwards of 70 to 100 kilowatts, which that'll do kind of like a small neighborhood, actually. Assuming you're not turning on every light in the house and running the vacuum cleaner and
Right.
then deciding to microwave everything and then decide to do every load of laundry in the house. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
whenever whenever I get around to the expansion of the homestead here, it might be a year or two before we get the money together and all the rest of it. And we have to finish my brother-in-law's place first. Um, I would like to get a backup generator because one of the fun
yeah,
things about living in an area that's heavily forested is trees fall down in the wind and they die and they
yeah,
get eaten out by termites and other bugs and then they crash
yeah,
onto electrical lines and then all of a sudden your whole neighborhood has no electricity. And
yeah.
NYSEG, the utility here in New York, the New York State Electrical and Gas Company or Corporation, and then all of their contractors. I mean, they're pretty good about it. You don't hear too often about people going any longer than 3 or 4 days.
That's not
Um,
too bad.
New
I
York's
mean,
pretty good
under
about
those
it.
circumstances, that's not actually not too bad.
Yeah, I will give New York their due. New York State, because of the Leviathan that it is, and it's so
Sure,
massive,
right,
and
right.
everybody knows our taxes here are ridiculous. Some of that stuff does filter down to useful things, and NICEAG, New York State's like 90% covered in forest, so they have to be prepared for this kind of stuff. But yeah, we do want to get a generator here at some point. So yeah, well, your thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on like other than like the simplistic, the simplicity of the generator itself? Like, are there certain brands that are more simple or year
Um,
models? Like, what do you think?
well, So I like the Generac product. It's a good product, though they are unfortunately going that direction of too much tech, in my opinion. Kohler is still holding it down with pretty simple stuff, as is Cummins. Um, I mean, it's Cummins. Of course, you're going to pay for the name, but it is a good product and another product that is fairly simple. To which is again, that's what you're after. If I were designing or engineering a generator, which I will be doing once actually my facility is all done, I'll probably go and design and engineer my own brand of generator. Um, I don't talk about it with really anybody, and I certainly don't put anything online because I don't want anybody seeing it. But because just how this is. I mean, electric creation tends to get a lot of people interested very quickly in you, and I don't want them interested in me. Not not for that reason anyway. And
Guy who puts videos on the internet all the time
yeah,
does not want attention.
not that kind of attention. Not that kind of attention. But yeah, I like to try and keep it kind of simple. And so if I'm designing something, I'm going to keep it as absolutely bare bones as possible, just because of what I see. Again, the whole point of power generation isn't to just power your generator. Your point of power generation is to run all the stuff that you want, and the laws of physics are as such that you don't create you can't get more out of something. That's just laws of thermodynamics.
Yeah, entropy is
And
what it is, and you live in
and
Texas, and you need
exactly.
you need air conditioning. So
Exactly. And most people, and I would probably say, if I had to hazard a guess of my customers, or from our customers, I'd probably say 80%, a good solid 80% of our customers, all they really care about is refrigeration, meaning AC, running their freezer that's full of food, running their fridge that's full of food, and charging their phone. That's really all most people care about in the final analysis. When you're talking about a power outage or an emergency event or something like that, most people aren't like, "Oh my God, there's a huge hurricane! Quick, crank up the hot tub and let's." Most people aren't doing that and saying, "Yeah, let's run the sauna and and do every load of laundry in the house and microwave everything." Most people aren't doing that. Most people are like, "Oh, there's a power outage. Okay, well, at least my freezer is solid. The food that I just bought, because I mean, down here in Texas, I mean, lots of people down here. they'll buy a half a beef at a time. At least
Why
lots of people
not?
that I know.
You got
There's
ranchers
yeah,
everywhere, you know?
yeah, and it's not that expensive. I mean, it's expensive. It's pay me now or pay me later kind of thing, right? I mean, you still have to have like 1,800, 2,000 bucks to do it, but you're going to spend that anyway. But at least you're getting grass finished. You're getting really high quality meat, and you know where it came from. It's not, it's not just random.
And not at
And
grocery store prices with the markups.
yeah, I mean, you're still within, about 10% of it. So it's usually not a huge savings, but it is a savings, and I'll take it. And
Yeah.
so for a lot of people, they'll do that. So if you've got a couple $1,000 worth of beef in your freezer, you want to protect that. And so yeah, like I mean, if I'm talking usually to the man of the house, and I'm not a salesman. I don't. They rarely send me out on sales calls. I don't, which is good. Good that you don't send me on the sales calls because I usually because I mean I have a really high. It's weird. I have a really 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 high close rate. Like I have an absurdly high close rate, but it's usually because I terrified the people into buying a generator, not because they wanted to pay a generator. It's like, and I don't try to do that. It's not, but that's just it. It's like, well, okay. I mean, 80% of people, of course, like I said, that's all they really care about. Can I charge my phone? Am I cool? And do I have AC if it's really hot? Because down here, if it's 90, nobody, it's horrible. Not to get too far afield, but it's horrible because if you have a hurricane down here, it's usually really hot. So right after that hurricane, then it's stagnant. There's no wind, and it's insanely hot
And humid.
and and humid. And now, and of course, if your AC's out, you are miserable. Uh, especially down here because it is really humid. And so, yeah, and as someone I can speak from firsthand experience, as someone who after Beryl, the hurricane came through here, even our house, and because we were renting at the time, and I didn't have a generator that I could work. I had generators, but not for the whole house because it crushed our house. So I didn't have electricity to that. There was no way to do that, and so the only thing I had 10 days of no AC, which is just brutal. Um,
Yeah, I
it's
do not.
unrelenting, and there's no escape. So,
Yeah, I do not have AC in my house, but I am in upstate New York. However, in the
right.
summer, we'll get 2 or 3 weeks, maybe not all in one spot, but like 2 or 3 weeks worth of days throughout the summer where it's in
Mm,
excess of 90. And our house is well insulated. So what we do and what a lot of other people around here do is we do the trek of like close all your windows and doors all day and then you open them at night so that the
right.
cooler air comes in and then you shut everything and then it usually will hold that temperature. And if it doesn't,
Right.
you just use a fan and we just sleep naked on top of our sheets, whatever.
That's
We,
Yep.
we we deal we deal with the heat such that we get that type of heat in the summer. Um,
Right. In the Yeah, because you guys do get pretty warm up there occasionally. It's like what 4 or 5 weeks or so, you'll get pretty warm before
yeah,
it cools back off. Because it's probably cold up there, I imagine now,
right
or cool,
now,
or probably in the 40s and 50s, maybe,
it's
isn't it?
warmed up significantly this week. We had a good solid 3 week run of actual classic winter, and between here and temperatures that have been in various parts of Canada, we're on track to having the coldest winter in like 30 years.
Wow. We
And
had one. We No, we had 2 days of winter here, and now it's back up to 80. So, you
yeah.
know,
Well, I mean, it's we had a number of days here that started in the negative digits Fahrenheit.
Mhm.
So, I am from Canada. My Canadian friends will laugh at
Right.
this, but like, one morning it was like -3 Fahrenheit here before I went to
Hmm.
work, which is -18, -19 Celsius, which is not that cold. Um,
Yeah.
where I'm from. And
Right.
it's now right around freezing. It's like 30, 32.
Oh,
So
that's not bad. That's not too bad at all. Um, the last time I was in Canada was well, it was a number of years ago. It was up in Edmonton, or north of Edmonton, actually. And I want to say outside. It was like negative 40-ish, something
Yeah,
like that,
that's about right up
and
there.
somewhere thereabouts. And I mean, it was because it was pretty cold, and I remember having to put a jug of water on the accelerator pedal on the foot valve to keep the engine running a little bit, idling higher, so that it wouldn't shut off automatically. Because at the time, it was a stupid company truck, and where they have that auto shut off after 5 minutes because they don't want you idling the engine.
Right.
The problem with that logic, of course, is that at that temperature, it may not start again.
That's
Yeah,
true.
maybe
Yeah.
that's great. You may have the bunk heater, but and so the driver might be okay, but the truck may not start again. The diesel will probably gel, you know, or you can have problems with it, or in which is usually the case, which is usually the batteries. You know, the batteries may or may not take that.
Right. No,
So I
a lot of trucks from the south are not spec'd for northern service. You
no,
know,
no,
people up
that's it.
north, you'll have there's a number of things that are on Canadian trucks, especially way up north, that you don't see down here. Alcohol evaporators attached to the
Mhm.
air system so that you're
Mm,
constantly spraying a little bit of methyl alcohol to get all the moisture out of the airline so nothing freezes.
right.
Guys up north will have a bra on their grill to help
Yeah.
the when you're going down the road,
Yeah.
get 30,
Keep the heat in there. Yeah.
keep the heat. And then some guys will put a tarp underneath to keep the wind off the oil pan. So you'll have a canvas tarp that goes down between your frame rails and wraps around the bottom of the engine, comes back up the other side.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I was so on that note about idling, I was
Yeah.
at one night. I was at when I ran the ice for 4 years, right? So 4 winters
Hmm.
in a row, I did the ice roads, and
Hmm.
I'm at this diamond mine in the Northwest Territories, and it is god awful cold. It's like -50 something. The wind is howling, and I was driving this older CH Mac, and I had the idle set up to 1,000 revs for the
Hmm.
night for sleeping,
Sure. Yeah.
and I woke up after I passed out because I was really tired, and then about an hour later I woke up because it was cold. And it's not that the fan stopped working or the truck gelled up; it's that
Hmm.
1,000 RPM, even with the bra on the front, the tarp on the oil pan, was
Hmm.
not enough to keep the heat in the engine. So like my heater was blowing like instead of the air being like 75 or 80 something comfortable, it was blowing air that was like 50, right?
Oh my gosh.
So I had to bump the idle up to like 1,300 RPM to get the heater box to actually blow warm air in the cab. That's how cold it
Wow.
was, right? So
Wow.
it's
No,
it's a different world up there.
yeah, I went into I remember going into to a Flying J or whatever it was to do a shower and came back out. I was in there maybe, I don't know, 40 minutes round trip on the whole thing, and came back out, and my truck, the truck I was in at the time, it did that roll, 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 and then it finally started, and I had just run it. I had just run it. And this would have been just maybe just a little whisker south of Calgary. So it was still fairly cold
Right. Yeah, you were down
up
around. Yeah, I
there.
think you were
And
down around Nanton or something. There's a truck stop down there.
yeah, there it's probably right. And so it was still fairly cold. And so yeah, so I'm familiar with it. I mean, I've driven to Alaska from the States up through the Yukon territory. Fortunately, I did that in the summertime, which is really beautiful.
It sure
To
is.
drive.
The
It's
only
one of the most beautiful drives you can take is that drive to Alaska, in the
Yeah,
summertime, especially.
the only problem with doing that in the summer is that's when all the tourists are on the road who can be, maybe
Yeah.
they don't know what cruise control is.
Yeah, there is that problem. In fact, I remember telling my wife, because I told her some of the things that I'd seen, because I said, yeah, I mean, there's actually, we pulled up on one of the outlier roads, so one of the lesser traveled portions of the highway, and there was nobody out there. I mean, for probably 50 miles in every direction, who knows? And there was this entire herd of bison lounging and laying down on the road. And we're not talking like, 10 or 12. There's like 700 of these things, they're out there,
Yeah.
and having to beat the horn and then watch them slowly get up because they're not in a big hurry
Nope.
to really do anything. And move forward and trying to explain to her that, like, yeah, I mean, because I rolled the window down and got a chance, and actually got a chance to be sniffed by a giant bison, which is almost eye level practically. With trying to explain how big these animals are. These things are huge, and
Don't run into one at speed.
oh yeah, that's what I mean. Exactly, and these are massive, massive animals. They're really cool. You don't get the chance to see them up close like that unless you go and do something like that. But it was pretty cool. So you get a chance. It is one of those things that, as a truck driver, you do get to see a lot of things that most people will never see. They'll just never see it. You get to experience things, good and bad, that most folks will never fully understand. And unless you go and do it, unless you go do something like that. So
Yeah, and
I
it
remember.
takes the time, right? Like, so lots of people do their own individual road trips for holidays. You get your couple of weeks off from your job, you go
Mhm.
somewhere with the kids, you go camping, whatever,
Yeah,
and they get that taste of the road. But when you're on it all the time, and
yeah,
you get to see sort of all the complexities and opposites, and like you could either go to New York City or Houston, or you could go to Alaska, or go where I
yeah,
went up on the ice, and like you can see the sort of duality of man, like the super urban, the super rural, the super cold, the super
yep.
hot. Um, and that you get more of that when you're a driver and you're on the road all the time. So
It's true. Yeah,
you're
you.
going to Edmonton, you're going to Alaska, but you're from Texas, so I'm assuming you're hauling
Mhm.
oil field equipment or something up north.
That back then, that was years ago, and that was actually a steel building. When
Oh,
I'd take steel buildings up there. So not necessarily equipment, but flatbeds that usually had like the steel building structures, the
like
skeletons. You run those up there and then they unload them and then you just deadhead back. Typically, I mean, I've never taken a load out. There's like no backhaul, but just drop them off. And in fact, the one that I took, and I don't know why they don't send this stuff by barge. I think most of it goes by barge, but I think for certain applications, for whatever reason, some of the stuff had to go by truck. So okay, fine. Um, but because it is strange to do that, to take a load to go to Laredo, Texas, for example, and pick up a steel building that's made in Mexico and truck it all the way up to like Edmonton. And you would think that the shipping would kill that. Like, man, why didn't you just make them in Canada? 'Cause it's not like Canada doesn't have a steel mill. They have lots of steel and tons of steel in Canada.
that's what I started hauling when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, there's always up there. There's always a truck with steel coils on it all the time. So but yeah, that it is a strange thing to go when again into Laredo at maybe like 100 degrees there, and then go all the way up. um, but yeah, most of what I hauled was that either steel buildings or equipment. You know, one time it was a giant piece of an air conditioner. So it was for a very large. It was for the Edmonton Mall,
Oh, the
and
West
so
Edmonton Mall. Oh, wow,
yeah,
yeah.
so and a lot of folks don't may not think of this. They don't think of air conditioners. They think of air conditioners like, oh, central AC or like a window unit. No, these are these air conditioners are gigantic. They're sold in pieces. They're so big. And they assemble them on the roofs of these buildings.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
so
they're
massive.
air handlers. They get craned up and
Air
put
handlers,
together like Lego.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, and they are designed to move a lot of air, and it's like what you would use at a stadium or something like that. They're absolutely massive, and so a couple of times I've taken stuff like that up there too. Big chunks of air conditioning units, and then they have to crane it off and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, fortunately, most of that stuff was in the summertime, which was kind of nice because Edmonton in the summer is beautiful. It's really kind of cool up there. Um,
For all of about
Same.
5 weeks.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And Calgary was the same way. I always thought Calgary was just one of the coolest little cities, that I'd ever been through. It was really, it's a city, but it's not a very. It feels like a big town. It's kind of how it feels, but it's really nice, and I thought it was pretty cool. And again, aside from the Canadian accents, which I will never get used to, uh, but it was pretty cool. The only thing I didn't like about Canada, this is my complaint and stuff, is that everything was so god awful expensive. which was just insane how much it cost to buy a club sandwich and French fries back in the day, back when I used to eat
Right.
stuff like that.
So this is a
And
good place to pivot. That's a good
yeah,
observation. So you're an outsider to Canada. You're trucking up north, and
hmm
like most Americans, you come up there and you're like, WTF? So one of the things that you're known for online is you discuss
yeah,
economics a lot. You talk about,
yeah.
I would assume your economic, your preferred economic philosophy is somewhat libertarian. You know,
I don't have a political home on that anymore.
no, but at least
I used
economically,
to, but
but
economically,
economically,
yeah, I believe in the idea of a free market. I think that that's actually really important, and I do think that but it has to be tempered with either with a hard currency, because if you have the one of the worst thing you can have, and I've been hammering people. I don't know if you've been following any of my posts recently. I love to mess with people on this. I've been posting
yeah,
this whole thing that why is it that communism and capitalism both have central banks? And I do this deliberately. It's I do that deliberately to mess with people
right.
because so many people don't bother to think about this. Because if you're going to have a so-called free market and a central bank, you don't have a free market. You're just going you just don't have one. Period. You have whoever is printing that money, that's who controls it. Period.
Yep.
So you can talk free markets and wages all you want, but as long as you have a central bank, you don't have a free market, which means you have a different set of rules that you need to apply to your economy. So since we have to, there's the this is a think of it like this: there's what should be, and then there's what is. Right?
Right.
We all know how
Yes.
this works.
Is versus ought.
Right. And what we have is to deal with is. And as a physicist, I have to deal with what actually is. Like not what,
Are you a
yeah,
trained
we could in
physicist too?
no, no. No, 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 no. Don't lump me into that category because then people assume that I have a bunch of degrees in this kind of stuff. And like, no, 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 I don't. This is just over decades of doing this stuff. So I mean, and it's one of the reasons why I'll match a lot. I'll match all of my real world experience against anybody's degrees, or Google searches for that matter.
Right.
I
No,
mean,
I
it's
love it.
just because I've just seen this stuff just too much. And so
Yeah.
from a
Well,
from a physics, but from a physics standpoint, I have to deal with what is, not what somebody in some theoretical alternate universe. And what is that we have a central bank that conjures dollars, in this case, dollars, because we're in the US, out of nothing. And that's it. So that's a completely different set of rules, which means, and this is the problem that a lot of the libertarians and I have butt heads on because I understand the well-meaning nature of wanting to say, no, no, we can have this free market and capitalism. Like, oh, stop. We don't stop. We don't have that. That hasn't been a thing in a very long, in probably since 1865. That hasn't been around for a very long time. So please, you guys sound like the people claiming that they want reparations for slavery from 200 years ago. That's what you sound like. You're talking about stuff that, dude, that's not real. What you have to deal with is real reality right now, which means that you can't apply those principles to it. You have to change the way you think about this and say this is why I hammer on the minimum wage, for example. And you've probably seen those posts too, where they're inflammatory. I do them deliberately.
right.
Where like minimum wage should be $230 an hour, and I can back that up just using the 1971 gold price. That's the number. The math doesn't lie, and people will freak out. You read the comments. It's just amazing to watch the meltdowns from people, and I try and explain like, dude, we don't have a free market. You're trying to apply free market principles to a captured fiat economy, and all you'll do with that is torture everybody. You drag this out, and then I get accused of being an accelerationist. Yeah,
Are
you
you
mean
are you a
I'm a
Nick
guy
Land
who's tired of
enjoyer?
being you mean I'm the guy who's tired of being ripped off and I want this to end? Yeah, I would like to kind of get this over with. And I think a lot of people are approaching that as well, that this is no fun. All of this is no fun anymore.
So
Having your
there's levels of capture too, right? So like building on
yeah,
what you just said. So we are I think most people that pay attention to this stuff understand the problems with central banking and
mhm,
money printing, and we just went through COVID where they printed even
yeah.
more, and
Oh my God, yeah.
United States is $40 trillion in debt, and so but
And
like
climbing.
and climbing, and so your sandwiches being expensive in Canada is a very good
Hmm.
illustration of how that captured fiat system gets built into more levels of capture. So I'm going to talk
Yeah.
about Canada. So there's been a lot of discussion with like Trump talking about tariffs and
Hmm.
Canada, and they renegotiated NAFTA to the USMCA, and people don't understand like why are we picking on Canada? The Canadian economy is a captured economy, and I want to explain
Hmm.
this. And I hope you share this with all of your followers
Yeah,
because, like, I want
absolutely.
people to understand the difference between the United States economy and the Canadian economy. The
Make sure you
can,
send me the link, and I'll post it.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So the Canadian economy is a series of cartels. Okay. So we have a
Hmm.
dairy cartel. There's like something like a 260% tariff on American dairy products coming into Canada because they don't want them, right?
Right.
They claim that like America's too big of an economy and they'll crush the local dairy farmers with their price. Maybe there's
Hmm.
something to that. I'm not here to argue it. However, because the Canadian government, like even the Conservative Party, right? You might have heard of a guy named Maxime Bernier. He started this thing called PPC. He was like one of the token libertarians in the Conservative Party years ago. He tried to run to be the leader of the Conservative Party, and one of his platform policy pieces was to break up the dairy cartel and say we're not doing supply management. We are not getting involved in how this operates because it inflates the price of dairy to the benefit of dairy farmers in Quebec. Well, when you drill down into the dairy farmers in Quebec, it's not like your local farmer. Who the government is protecting is a family called the Saputos in Montreal, who are like the eighth or ninth or 10th largest dairy corporation on earth, right?
Hmm.
The Saputos don't get to be billionaires without the Canadian government protecting them from American competition, right?
Sure.
And then Canada has like the second or third most expensive cell phone rates in the world
Hmm.
because of Rogers and Telus and Bell, all these telecommunications cartels, right?
Right.
The Canadian government, especially as it's governed by the Liberal Party of Canada, who are the political arm of something in Canada we call the Laurentian elite. The
Hmm.
Laurentian elite are a group of families who've been around for a century and a half, and they are in with all of the production dairy, sugar, wheat, steel, all the stuff that happens in Canada in the material economy is run by this small group of families. And they don't want to have to compete at all with
Right.
anybody, right?
Right.
So with Canada, not only do you have a smaller market of people with a smaller number of competitors, which
Hmm.
has an effect on what the prices of things are, you have the government doing everything to protect
Right.
that small number of actors on the market from any outside competition. And then a big thing in Canada was like interprovincial trade. There's actually barriers in Canada for certain products and services to go between provinces, right? So like
Right.
Canada's economy is cartelized over and above the fiat printing, over and above
Right.
the interference from the Chinese Communist Party, which has been proven. They don't talk about it, but like you know,
Right.
there's a lot of discussion about oh no, big bad Trump and becoming a satellite of the United
Right.
States. Well, we're the mouse next door to the elephant. Who would you
Right.
and then like Prime Minister Carney, who was handpicked to succeed Trudeau, whom he
Hmm.
was an advisor to. So all the bad things that have happened in Canada in the last 10 years were partly because of the guy who's prime minister now, right?
Right. Yeah. So none of it's going to get undone.
None of it's going to get undone. And in
Yeah.
fact, like he's pivoting towards trying to like increase trade with China and the
Yeah.
European Union, who are like, say what you will about the bad economic policy and the fake capitalism of America. Like,
Hmm.
we are still, America is still better at that stuff than those guys. And the
Sure.
Canadian government would rather focus towards those guys than their immediate neighbor who's somewhat better. So this is why your
Yeah.
sandwich was so expensive when you went to Alberta.
Yeah. That's just it. Is that the cost, all of that is downstream of the currency. And it will always be your cartels, your cartel arrangements. So such as like you, for example, you gave the example of the dairy industry. Yeah, these things can only be turned into cartels because somebody can pay to enforce all that crap. And the only reason they can pay to enforce it is because they can print money out of nothing and pay people to go enforce it. That's it. In an actual, and like this is it's like the Bitcoin argument, and I understand Bitcoin. I understand Bitcoin probably better than a lot of people who pump Bitcoin. And I understand the idea, but the problem is it's probably a little too complex for people to really get their head around. You have to understand that. I mean, imagine the ramifications of a true hard money economy. Then there's no money to pay for any enforcement unless you can tax somebody for it, or unless they're willing to actually voluntarily pay. And who's going to voluntarily pay to be enslaved? Oh, a few people might do it, but most will not. Most will say, I don't care about your cartel arrangement, and I'm not going to pay to enforce that. Who cares?" Which means that they all go away.
But
Now,
I
that's
want to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to something you
yeah,
just
no,
said.
absolutely, no, absolutely. Yeah, mark it down or something. But I'll finish what I was saying, is that, or finish the thought, is that when this kind of thing happens, a lot of this stuff goes away. It's good and bad. So yeah, your giant mega corporate and oligarchs and your cartels go away, but that opens up the door for a whole bunch of small businesses, which is really what people should be focusing on, is more their own business and their small business. I think it was, before the turn of the 20th century, so this would be the 1800s to the 1900s. Before that turn, something like 95% of people in the US, anyway, I can't comment on Canada, but it's probably not too far different, but in the US were business owners, or they were apprentices, learning a trade or a skill or a craft of some kind. Doesn't make any difference what it is, but they were working at somebody's business, and they were learning something, with the understanding that after they had learned something, they would go to the other side of town or go to another town, and they would open up their own business, not go try and find this. The in human events, the idea of working for the mega employer is very recent. That's very recent. That's within the last 100 years. For
Well,
thousands of years, people did not do
200,
that.
but yeah,
Yeah, well, I'm talking about as far as, like, we understand the mega employers the way we understand them today,
right,
where like companies like Amazon have like 1 million+ employees, just in
right.
the States, not including the rest of the world. That's very recent. Before that, it was, again, lots of small shops, independent shops. I mean, car manufacturing is a great example of this. People love to use Henry Ford as a good example, and I do too. Henry Ford's a great example. He's a great topic of conversation. But that's a good example. Back when Ford was building cars, there were hundreds of small car companies.
Yes.
Actually, I think there were thousands, if I'm not mistaken. They were everywhere. There were tons of guys building cars. There was massive competition, and that wasn't bad. Didn't Ford's competitor wasn't all those small guys. Ford's competitor were the big guys. That's it, and that's how I would have looked at it too. And it was Durant, for example, CEO of GM at the time, going around swallowing up all these small companies. And how did they do it? They used fiat money. The banks literally conjured that money out of nothing. They bought it. I mean, I guess you could call it, they purchased it. They purchased it with fiat money, and the owners accepted it. So, okay, yeah, fair enough. You could make that libertarian case that there was a willing buyer, willing seller, sure. But when they got to Ford, when Durant said, "Hey, I'll buy you too," and Ford said, "Sure, no problem at all," which shocked them. They're like, "You're going to sell, really?" Like, "Yeah, but you need to pay me in gold." And they couldn't do it. No bank would touch it, because, yeah, see, you didn't have the money to do it. You basically printed this out of nothing. You conned everybody, and then you created a cartel, which is exactly what happened. And so, yeah, everything downstream of that is just going to turn, eventually, it just turns into whoever is printing the most money, whoever has control of it. Or whoever nowadays, they just say, "Oh, yeah, I bought this asset 2 years. This is what's happening in housing. You know how this works." You've got these rental bros saying, "Yeah, I bought this." And they used to teach classes on this. You buy a house for $150,000. Then you go to the bank and say, "Okay, yeah, hey, this house is worth actually 225." And then you take your equity out, and then you take that money and you roll it over. And there's this one-way ratcheting up of all these prices beyond what the market will actually pay. The market actually, it's way outside the market. And then they wonder why it is that nobody can afford these $2,700 a month rent payments. Like, dude, you're too far
Yeah. Well,
outside.
back to
And
Canada,
yeah,
that system, as you've just described, is also being parasitized by another, you might call them a quasi cartel, is that in Canada, the entire real estate market has been affected greatly by the laundering of money through it by Chinese Communist Party affiliated
I've
triads.
heard that.
Yeah, doing the
I've heard that.
fentanyl and fentanyl
Yeah.
precursors and narco laundering. And so they
Hmm.
launder their money through casinos and through the real estate market. And that's how they wash it. And the Canadian government is willing accomplices in this because of what
Sure.
happens is that the overvaluation of homes allows all these like retired all set boomers to have even more money than they already had, right?
Hmm.
Fiat money, because now their home is overvalued. They can take out home equity loans, buy a boat, pay
Yep.
for their kids' school, pay for this, pay for that.
Hmm.
So it's politically impossible for
Plus, they get
any
to increase the taxes too.
yeah, it increases taxes, but also any political party that tries to correct this and say this is fake. We have a
Hmm.
foreign country laundering their money through our economy, making it impossible for young people to buy homes because all of the real estate valuations are way overinflated. We need to
Right.
fix this. But then you go to the boomers who own all the assets, and they're like, "No fucking way, man! Our house
Yeah.
is like worth twice as much as it should, and we're living large off that." So nobody, it's politically impossible to fix that, right?
Yeah.
And so the
We just saw
ratcheting
that with Trump.
continues.
We just saw that with Trump. I mean, he was doing what? I can't believe he said this. It was like what 2 weeks ago. He was talking about how he didn't want real estate prices to come down, and it's like, okay, so don't ever talk to me about drug addiction ever. I never want to hear a word from you about drug addiction because this is worse than drug addiction. Drug addiction affects you. You're now destroying millions of people, by propping all this bullshit up. You're doing this, not the American people. Again, the down here in the States, the median household income is something like $81,000. That's the median, and then you take out about 20K in taxes, which leaves them about 5K a month of real money that they can actually spend. And yeah, that's not going to buy some $600,000 house. That's not even going to buy a $400,000 house.
No,
You should be looking for houses around the 125 to 130 range, which is what they used to be for the longest time, for just normal plain Jane 322 houses in a reasonable neighborhood. Not a nice, just a reasonable neighborhood, just a neighborhood that was quiet. And yeah, so telling young people that, and young people, let me qualify that. Basically anybody under 50 at this point, telling young people, yeah, that's how bad this is getting. That they're not working hard enough, and that it's all their fault that they can't afford $600,000 starter houses. That's just ridiculous. And so when I hear something like this, well, we don't want to let the market come down because reasons, like, no, uh, don't ever talk to me that there's a free market. Not if you have a sitting president saying that they're actually going to actively intervene to make sure prices don't come down. There's nothing
right.
free market about
Well,
that.
all right.
Markets
So
markets have an up and a down. You're
yes, it's
not supposed to have this up forever kind of thing. That's not how
right.
that works.
They're supposed to have dynamism, and this is a great point
Yeah,
about the free. You don't talk to me about free markets. So
yeah,
you just sold your truck. We're both
yeah.
truckers. We're in the trucking business. Something
Hmm.
I've been harping on about for years, which is one of the reasons I joined Twitter. Oh, geez, 8 years ago now, 5 accounts
Hmm.
ago, I got canceled and deleted a bunch of times for talking about the Freedom Convoy, and I'm on account number 5 or 6 now. Anyway,
I
um,
think this is my third account now. Yeah, so
yeah,
yeah,
it's been good since Musk took over. That sort of pressure's gone away,
it
but
has helped. It has
it's helped.
definitely helped.
That guy's
Yeah,
got his other problems. I don't agree with him about stuff, but like he's letting me keep
yeah.
my account, which is fine. But
I'll take it. Yeah.
yep. So the free market and trucking thing, which again there isn't one, something I've had a
No.
lot of trouble with, and I hate to pick on boomers or anybody just because of their age, but some of
Right.
the people who've I've gotten into interesting discussions and tangles with online about the trucking industry is that the market for drivers is unnatural, right? So in any market, labor is a commodity. Labor has its own
Correct.
price, and labor will enter or exit the market based on pricing signals, right?
That's a generally accepted free market idea, and
Right.
I have explained it dozens of times to people.
Right.
Yes,
You're
correct.
gonna love my book. So a couple of the chapters of my book are dedicated to this question. So 1980, So here's the thing. We're going to talk about the hypocrisy of free market people, which you love doing. And so
Oh yeah.
this is my contribution to that discourse. I love discussing the hypocrisy too. So
Hmm.
1980, Jimmy Carter passes the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 because
Hmm.
prior to that, trucking operated as a cartel and it like slowed down the economy. The 70s economic doldrums sucked and interest rates were too high and they were trying to figure out how to like free things up. So they deregulated banking, trucking, airlines. There was all this stuff that Carter deregulated, which Reagan then inherited, and all the conservatives gave the credit to Reagan, but it was actually
Hmm.
Carter. And specifically, one of the intellectuals he hired as part of his own little brain trust, who was an economist from Cornell University named Alfred Kahn, who taught 8 miles from my house.
Hmm.
So Kahn comes along with a bunch of other advisors. They tell Carter to deregulate all this stuff, and he does it. Great, no problem. Let's accept that. So Carter deregulates trucking. Now it only costs you $300 to sign up for a motor carrier number. You don't have to show any experience in the industry. Anybody can go to a bank and get a loan for a truck and be a trucking company. You don't even have to drive the truck. You can hire a driver, right?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
fine. That sounds like a free market. Great, let's do it. So the first few years after the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 passes, the trucking industry goes into some extreme turmoil. All of the
Mm-hmm.
legacy carriers who were protected by the cartelization start losing drivers because they can't
Hmm.
pay them enough, because other companies are like cutting into their stuff. The whole market's in turmoil through the first half of the 1980s. A lot of guys quit. There may have been at that time the only time that there was ever a shortage of drivers. And when I say shortage, they're quitting. It's not that like they don't have them, they're just exiting the industry in large
Right.
quantities, right?
Right. Right.
So 1987 rolls around, and the American Trucking Associations, the corporate lobby group that everybody should go to their office and burn it down and not let any
Right.
survivors out of the doors, they start
Right.
this thing called the truck driver shortage narrative. And I've read the initial
Yeah.
study. It was by a guy named J.F. Casey, and this is where the term driver shortage is first coined. So
Mm.
they published this study, and then all of a sudden, within the next couple of years, you start seeing it in the media. I went through like Google. There's like a thing Google has where you can read newspaper articles from like 100 years ago, and you can search by terms. And the driver shortage thing starts really kicking in the media in the late 1980s, and it accelerates in 1990, and then it just keeps going crazy. And what happened is that the American Trucking Associations and their member carriers took this narrative that they created through a study they commissioned. They take it to the government and they say, we don't have enough truck drivers. That claim meets something buried deeply in the American psyche, the Puritan work ethic, something
Hmm.
about jobs. You all have to have a job. So everyone's like, oh,
Right.
wow, we need truck drivers. That's a job. That's something somebody can do.
Yeah.
Great. And everyone turns their brain off and doesn't ask, where are they going and why didn't the ones you had before stay? And this goes on for almost 4 decades, right? Where it's just driver shortage, and then it becomes a corporate welfare program. Member carriers start their own truck driving schools. Other truck driving schools pop up. There's subsidies and grants available for them. So now the market for drivers is being flooded with new
Mm.
entrants who may not have got into the trucking business if not for the free government money to train them. So this becomes a
Right.
key component to the mega carriers operating model and allows them to say, hey, we have 100% driver turnover every year, and it doesn't matter because the government's paying us for new ones, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
but those guys might only occupy the truckload freight, box trailer market, but they're so big that they affect everybody else's wage floor and wage
Correct.
ceiling,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
Corporate welfare, there's no free market here. This
Correct.
system starts to not work in the mid aughts or mid 2015s, like 20 around the 2010s. I
Hmm.
think what happens is that the YouTube comes along, more distribution of information. Then this
Yeah.
really great book by a guy I quote often named Steve Viscelli, who investigated the lease operator scams. So
Yeah. There's a lot of those.
all this information starts coming out, and people stop signing up to do it. They're like, why would I go into a job where I'm legally prevented from getting overtime? I'm only getting paid so many cents per mile. I'm thrown off the deep end
Right.
with no training. So now these large carriers are like, well, we have to supplement this lack of people signing up for our dodgy corporate welfare program. So now the insourcing starts, right?
Hmm.
And this is
Yeah.
why, like, Obama gets rid of the enforcement for English language proficiency. You start seeing the ATA talk up like, oh, hey, we have all these like Somali refugees. We should like encourage Somali small trucking businesses. Like this stuff starts 10 years ago. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Then COVID happens, and then the market for truck drivers goes through these crazy swings. Like all of a sudden there's none, all of a sudden there's tons of it for toilet paper and water for people who decide they're preppers overnight. Then it crashes, then it comes back up again with all the free money that gets handed out through the payments to people to stay at home, right? Then the Biden administration has presented this problem by the American
Hmm.
trucking associations, who say, hey, now that everybody's at home ordering stuff from Amazon and there's lots of demand, but nobody's working, and we don't have enough drivers, and the drivers we do have that we're going to lose anyway because of our retention problem are now getting like a 12% premium from our competitors, from smaller companies that are
Hmm.
entering the market because of the price signal given to them by COVID when there was high demand. So the
Correct.
government was literally trying to intervene in the free market's price signal,
Hmm.
saying we should have more drivers. The American Trucking Association comes to the Biden administration and says, yeah, we need more drivers, but we don't want to pay them this premium. So, what does the Biden
Yeah.
administration do? They work with a bunch of states, and this has been proven by research from my friends at American Truckers United that they just
Hmm.
like expanded who could get a CDL to basically anybody with a pulse. They dropped the
Yep.
requirements. This is where you start seeing the non domicile CDL thing spike. And now, so they were already trying to flood the market with drivers with corporate welfare for many decades. That stops working. Now we're just going to bring in the entire third world, care of the taxpayer and care of us lowering the barrier to entry, and then giving money to NGOs and nonprofits to like
Hmm.
find all these people, hanging out in Minnesota or whatever city and give them CDLs. And now Axel has to sell his truck.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't have said any better. That's all exactly on point. That's been the progression that I've seen for many years myself. I saw this happen when there was a company I worked for way early on, and the I want to say this he was the second in command. He was the vice president of the company, and he and I were pretty good friends. And this was a bigger company, but he and I actually we got along. We thought a lot alike. And he had pointed this whole thing out with the driver shortage problem, and because his position was, well, if there actually is a driver shortage, that means the rate should come up, right? That's just basic market economics right there. Yet they never do. So it sends the signal that that's the case. And because their biggest problem, because his biggest issue that he had was turnover, just like you mentioned. And the trucking industry, it's really expensive, especially if you're trying to get good guys. If you're trying to get good people to drive your trucks, whether it's as an owner operator or as a company driver, either way, it doesn't matter. Anybody who's any good at it is really expensive. They're not going to do this $1.10 a mile crap. They're just not. They need to make enough money to justify, especially from an owner operator perspective. So my position, I'll just give you my thoughts on this personally. I start taking loads, recently. Let's say the last 6 months worth of loads that I've taken, and the numbers. I start doing the numbers in my head, going, okay, I've got $100,000+ of my own money tied
Yeah.
up in my equipment. So, and then I've got to maintain all that. So not only do I have to actually pay for all this, I also have to maintain all of this equipment on top of that. And this is stuff people forget. They completely forget. Deferred maintenance in the trucking sector is incredible right now. There's trucks all over the road. I mean, it's more than I've ever seen. I've never seen this many trucks in my lifetime, just driving around as a driver, not a commercial driver, just as a motorist on the highway. The number of trucks getting towed off the side of the road because something blew up in that truck because nobody's been maintaining it. They can't afford to maintain any of that stuff. So something happened. And, or they never get the oil changed because these guys running these trucks for 38,000 miles with no oil change.
Mm.
Like, dude, and of course, and I never see a hood up at a truck stop from any, like, I can count on two hands the amount of times that I saw guys pull the hood up in the morning and check the oil.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding about
No,
this.
well,
So it's like
the quality of level of
all,
operator.
all all of that has gone right into the shitter. And so when if the company's trying to find quality guys, those quality guys are going to be expensive. They're not going to do this. And I'm no exception. So it works out to be like, okay, so I'm working and I'm making basically about 20, 25 bucks an hour. But I have 100,000 of my own money plus tied up into this. Actually, it's more than that.
Oh
There's a
yeah,
lot
way
more than
more.
that.
Yeah.
Tied up into this. And I'm having to maintain all this, and that doesn't, and I'm not including any of the off time that I spend maintaining the equipment. So if I total all this up, I'm basically working nonstop and making very little money. This is you're going to lose all your good guys. I can think of another friend of mine he's got 2 million miles, 2 million safe miles, no claims, no nothing, and same thing. He's like, dude, I can't justify this anymore. This is stupid. I'm not. Not only am I not making any money, the money that I am making doesn't buy anything. It doesn't pay for anything. Everything has gone so. In other words, everything in this country has gone up except wages,
Yes.
and it's a massive distortion in the marketplace. This is a huge, and this is why I love it, and I constantly the von Mises people, for example. You're familiar with the von Mises Institute
Yes.
and other
Yeah.
liberty. I constantly openly challenge them to the debate on Joe Rogan's podcast. I will do it live. I don't even need notes on the whole minimum wage thing. I will destroy you people on this because as far as I'm concerned, it's like, dude, there has to be a correction here. And when I say that, okay, the minimum wage should be something like $230 an hour, yes, I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but I'm not lying either. That's a real number. And it's like that kind of correction is going to have to happen sooner or later. The longer you keep this going,
Yeah, what you're talking about is the disparity between the idea, and I think I'm going to be devil's advocate here for the von
mhm,
Mises types and other folks, is that
sure, no
they
problem.
they object to the government setting the minimum wage. They say that the market
I
should
get it.
do it. But what's
I get it.
happening is that the market is failing, right? So
Correct.
as I just explained how the trucking thing works, instead of paying people more what the market minimum rate for their labor is, the
Hmm.
American Trucking Association's members went to Congress, went to their states, and said,
Hmm.
we need money for truck driver training schools to flood the
Right.
market so that the wages are
Yep.
suppressed. And then when
Yep.
that didn't work, they said, we need to engage in wage arbitrage against the entire third world. They are trying to suppress the natural minimum wage, which the von Mises
Correct.
people would support, because if it's natural and it's market driven, they will agree with you. But these guys are getting it
Correct.
messed up. They think that they're forgetting that, like, the minimum wage, the natural minimum wage that should be set by the market, is being
Hmm.
pushed down by the government.
That's exactly my point. Is that so? If you're so, in other words, it's like we're okay with using government to suppress wages, but we're not okay with using government to increase wages. Okay, now I know that you're all full of shit.
Right.
Now I know all of you are a bunch of liars, and you're either liars or you're shills or you're incompetent. It's what is it? Because this is it's like you're either in on it or you're incompetent. That's it. It's one or the other. It's the Trump thing. You're either in on
Right.
it or you're incompetent. I mean, come on,
Let me
man.
share an anecdote about that. I don't know if these guys are affiliated with the von Mises people. I think maybe
Mhm,
there's some connections there. There's a there's a think tank that Jeffrey Tucker was associated with for a
mhm,
while, and then they changed their names, and I think they're called the American Institute for Economic Research,
yeah,
AIER. They're like libertarian free market think tank guys
yeah,
up
sure.
in Mass. And I wrote an op-ed for them once and only once, and it basically described the corporate welfare program that is truck driver training, right? And
Oh yeah,
I said, guys, this driver shortage thing is a scam. The American government
yeah.
and the taxpayer are being soaked for this. And this lady that's an editor there really loved it. She's like, this is great, Gord. We're going to publish it. They publish it. And I think after the article had been live for a week or two, she sends me an email back and she says, Gord, we really love this article. This is great. But man, people think you're being too mean to the employers.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. Yeah, and that would exactly that. My response would have been, I don't give a shit. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean too mean to my employers? Like, come on, no, 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 no. Employers are businessmen, are they not? Well, if they can't handle the truth or they can't refute it, If they, in other words, if they can't refute the truth, okay, well then, dude, I mean, you, your feelings being hurt when I'm telling you, when I'm laying something out that is mathematically factual is not my problem. It's because, like, again, especially in the world of business, especially in the world of, again, people talking about, so-called capitalism and free markets, and like, okay, and again, and even getting more specific in the trucking sector, which is a business, and it's not only a business, it's one of the biggest in the world. It is a massive business. The people that are when you look at trucking in the trucking sector, how much money flows through the trucking sector, it's insane. On just a monthly basis, it's just the numbers are just staggering to think about it. So it attracts a lot of people. And I'm just like, well, just like with a lot of the brokers, you have all these the YouTube videos that for the longest, I saw those back in the early 2000s too. The guys like, hey, or late 2000s would be like, hey, become a trucking broker. What you do is you take the load and you take 40% off the top of it and then offer it to some low life truck driver. And I'm like, no, 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 no. What the hell are you doing, dude? Dude, 10 points is reasonable. 10 points is reasonable. If you're going to go do all that, you don't take 40 points off of something or more. Um, I know that there was this is actually pretty funny too. Anecdotally, I won't bore you with this, but anecdotally, I got a phone call from a broker one time on a load. He says, "Hey, it pays $9,400." So great. Let me check my schedule. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. Within that 10 minutes, I got a phone call from some other broker somewhere else, giving me the exact same load, and tells me, yeah, man, it pays $3,300. Like, really? Really? Would that load number be this? Because I just got offered 94 from the actual broker whose client that actually is. What you did was you wanted to pull that off the board and give it to me for $3,300 so that you can pocket over $6,000 on a load. And no, this is a huge problem. And I realize that there's sort of a caveat emptor, buyer beware kind of. I realize that, but at the same time, it's like this is the kind of thing that has happened, and all of these companies should be going out of business. Just like I point out with all the mega carriers, like you were talking about, the mega carriers right now that have been peddling all this shit should have been going out of business. They should be going bankrupt, all of them. They shouldn't be able to find drivers anymore. Instead, they're flooding these guys into the country to prop all these companies up.
Well, they're pivoting. So
And
what they're doing is the mega carriers, and this has become very apparent in the last year and a half or so, is that they're pivoting to power only subcontracting. So they're going to do the
yeah,
same thing Amazon and FedEx do, right? So like you're going to pull a JB Hunt trailer for JB Hunt on JB Hunt's version of Amazon Relay,
yeah,
and now JB Hunt doesn't have to buy trucks or drivers, and we just subcontract that to you. And we
hmm
can say, we're not insourcing drivers. We're not paying
right.
substandard wages. No, just all your subcontractors are.
I tried to explain this to somebody who was saying, like, oh, well, all they have to do to get rid of all these illegals is just go after the employers. And I'm like, it's not that easy.
No.
It's not that easy anymore. That was the 80s. You could do that in the 80s, where you could go into the place and scream La Migra, and like 600 people would go bailing out of windows to get to run away from immigration. That's the 80s. That's not now. Now it's a lot more sophisticated. They set up corporations. They set up several layers of LLCs. It's not just one or two. Dude, it's like thousands of
Yeah.
LLCs they'll set up,
Shout out
and
to
they'll have,
Danielle Chaffin for
yeah,
documenting all this on Twitter. Yeah.
exactly. So you'll have some apartment complex, apartment 317 that has 1,700 trucking companies located in that one apartment. And yeah, it's much harder to do this stuff nowadays. They set all this stuff up. It's a huge paperwork trip, and the only thing that you can do, at least in my view, the only thing that you could do if you were really serious in the trucking sector about getting rid of all the illegals and all the flip flops and all the people out there that are doing this stuff, if you were serious about this, what you would do is you would hold the shipper and the broker responsible personally. That's it. That's the only thing you could do. So whoever signs the manifest at the shipping company, they go to jail. So that puts it not just on Amazon, for example, and I'll pick on Amazon because I don't give a shit about Amazon. But if Amazon hires, Sanjay Singh or something like that to work at the shipping dock at Amazon at an RDC, and he signs that form, he goes to jail. If he sends that load out with somebody who doesn't speak English, can't do any, or has a non-domiciled CDL, or doesn't have any CDL at all,
Yeah.
it doesn't even know what the hell he's doing, doesn't know how to put it in neutral. I just saw that video. Dude who didn't. I just posted that. The dude who didn't even put it in park. He didn't even know how to drive his truck. I've had guys ask me that in the parking lot. Can you back my truck for me? I have never had that happen before. Never. Some dude asking me if I could back his truck for him. Are you kidding me? What? What? How did you even get out here? Um, and but yeah, that's the kind of thing is you have to hold those guys responsible for it. That's the only way to do it.
Right. And this
Um,
system, this system we're describing also, I'm going to bring it back to what we penned before. You
yeah,
said, who would willingly sign up to be a slave? Who would willingly do
right.
this? Well,
Yeah.
there's lots of them actually. And so what happens is these carriers, these chameleon carriers with hundreds of
Hmm.
different LLCs, hiring guys with non-domiciled CDLs,
Right.
there's a whole architecture of bringing these people to America.
Yep.
It's from India, Serbia, it's all over the world. It's not just one country. And,
It's everywhere. Yep.
and what happens in my investigations into how this works in Canada and a little bit less so here in the US is that there's these networks of guys in India who will sell a service to you. They'll say, listen, you pay me 30 grand, 40
Hmm.
grand, 50 grand. I get you a visa. I hook you up with an employer in Canada or the United States. You
Yep.
get yourself there and then you go work for this company, but you owe me 50 grand or you have to pay it up front, but you don't have the money.
Yeah.
So your family mortgages what little land they have in India. And now you owe
Hmm.
all these people fucking money just to buy a job in the United States. You get to the United States,
Yep.
you're working for another Indian guy who's paying you one third of what an American truck driver would get,
Or
and
less.
or
I've heard.
less,
Or,
or
or
less,
less. Yeah.
and now your paycheck is also most of it's going to all these
Yep.
people you paid to get here. And they still
Correct.
do it. Like they're still coming. So people are literally
Yep.
paying money up front to become indentured servants to haul America's freight. And that whole
And
system
that is
is it's so complex. It's
It is, and
everywhere.
it's because the and this is where the other angle that I approach it at too. I mean, I don't, I try not to get into this too much because I lose people really quickly. But I point out that the currency difference, the dollar, the $1 in $1 in India is 91, approximately 91 rupees. $1. So that means if let's say you're an Indian and you come to the U.S. I'm just going to pick on the Indians for a second because they're the most prevalent right now. um, they come to the U.S. and if they are able to pocket, let's say $5,000 times 91 in their country. Now consider that so I looked it up. The median income in India is something like I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was something like 230,000 rupees a year or something like that. Well, when you divide that by 91, it doesn't take much to make you don't have to make a lot of dollars in the US. You don't have to. You can because of that currency exchange. That's why they're able to pull this off. If the US dollar, for example, like my idea would be to devalue the USD, and I would do it from the bottom up, not from the top down. Right now we have top down inflation, and that's just going to make things much worse. If you devalue it from the bottom up, in other words, you send every American $10 million, let's say. That's a round number. That would make the dollar worth less. It would be, let's say, $700,000 to 1 rupee. Every one of them would flee. Every one of them. They would be fleeing like roaches when the lights come on. Every illegal in this country would be fleeing back to their home countries immediately. Now, would that hurt the American people? No, not really. It would hurt a few boomers and a few fake billionaires might get hurt on that, but the average American would be just fine. The infrastructure is still here. Your house doesn't just explode tomorrow morning because the dollar collapses. That's not how that works. And but yeah, this is a huge problem. So it's a direct subsidy. People forget that subsidies come in different forms, and this is where I give a lot of the libertarians a lot of grief on this. Is that when they say things like, "Well, the government should set minimum wage." Hold on, government shouldn't do a lot of things that it does, and one of which is subsidizing. If you flood a country with cheap labor from another country, that is a subsidy. That is a subsidy. That is a direct subsidy, and it's a bad one too because not only are you ruining people's money, their spending power in the U.S. Not only are you doing that, you're also destroying your young people because they're not getting jobs earlier. You have people now that are 30 until they get their first job. No, dude, that's insane. You cannot let someone be
Wow.
adolescent until they're in their 30s. You cannot. That is so destructive to do that to people. When I started, not that I mean, like I started working when I was about 11. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should go do that, But I think most of Gen X has a story of, yeah, their first job was when they were in their early teens. They went and did something. They may have had a paper route. Again, it's a bit of an anachronism,
Yeah.
but they may have had something like that. Or they worked at Arby's. One of my first jobs was when a kid was when I was Arby's, when I worked at Arby's, and I think I was like maybe 14. They allowed, like, they had really strict rules on when you could work, but you could work X amount of hours. I think you couldn't work more than 10 hours a week or something like that back then.
Yeah.
But my point is that you want your younger people to develop a work ethic of some
Right.
kind.
And it's being obliterated.
It's being completely annihilated right now. So now you have a whole bunch of young people that are losing that connection between work and money. They're losing that connection now. Just like, and everybody wonders, like, why is it all these young people are voting for socialism? Boy, I wonder why. Because they're rapidly losing that connection between being productive and then getting money as a result of that. They're losing that connection of the market. And when you lose that, I mean, my God, the demoralization that's happening. Look at it. It's so prevalent. That's why there's this huge disconnect, and it's so destructive to do. And so, yeah, not only are you subsidizing these businesses with cheap labor that should be going out of business, you're also destroying your own people, in your own country. In other words, the whole idea being that, like, well, we can just have Americans can compete. This is the libertarian thing. Let's the open borders libertarian thing where they can compete with all. No, not if you're subsidizing them. Not if you have a welfare state.
Well,
You can't
another
have open
another
borders and a welfare state, dude. You
another
cannot do that.
another thing that the open borders guys don't have an answer for, and like
Hmm.
let's accept their argument as it is. We
Sure.
should just have a complete worldwide open market.
Okay.
Everybody should come
Yeah.
and go. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, we kind of do have that sort of, except
Sort
all
of.
all the traffic is going in one direction. I get
Correct.
I've gotten shit from people on Twitter. There's a guy who works for one of the big load boards who's a humongous fucking libtard, and I had to block him on Twitter because he just calls me a racist and shit all the time.
Right.
And
Whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, dude, find me a truck driver that looks like me, pale
Hmm.
skin, lumberjacket, plaid,
Yeah.
whatever, drinking a Tim Hortons coffee, driving a truck in the Punjab, taking a job from some Punjabi guy, and doing it at scale and crashing at a very high frequency. Find me that. Find me that in
Yeah.
India. Find me that in Serbia. Find me that in Russia. Find me that in the Philippines. Find me that in Eritrea. Find me that in Somalia. Find me that in Serbia. Find me that anywhere. It's not happening. There's
Correct.
zero. There are zero Canadian or American born truck drivers traveling overseas to engage in this free trade, this global
Correct.
trade in labor that we're all supposed to accept as like some
Right.
given, awesome thing, an unalloyed good. It's just accepted as a thought terminating cliche that this is awesome. Okay, where do I go? There is nowhere to go. This is it
This
right
is
here.
this is this is a huge problem that I have with the open borders people in this is that Americans can't just fuck off to some other country.
No, this
Other
is
countries
it.
don't want Americans. They make it very clear. Now, like the passport bros will argue and they'll say, "Well, no, you can move to Thailand and live for $20 a day or something like that." Stop right there. Thailand wants your money. They don't want you. If you run out of money, I will assure you they're going to tell you to leave.
Yep.
If think of it like this, and this is the analogy I use, and I have yet to hear anybody respond to this that has ever been able to respond with any kind of any. I've never run into it yet. If the U.S. right now rounded up all of its homeless poor people, let's say that it did this, and what is it, about 3 million approximately? I hear conflicting numbers, somewhere between 3 and 4 million. Let's go with the low number of 3 million people. If they rounded up all their homeless people out of Portland, they didn't want to keep Portland weird anymore. They rounded up all the weirdos and they shoved them all into Mexico. What would Mexico say? Mexico would come uncorked. They would say, "Oh my God, this is an act of war, what you're doing. We don't want these poor people. We want rich Americans to go to Cancun and spend a bunch of money. We want rich Americans to go to Playa, whatever the hell it is, some fancy resort town and spend a bunch of money. That's what they want. They don't
And
want
then
poor
leave. Don't
Americans
don't
and
don't
then
stay.
leave. Yeah, they don't want rich, Americans that are poor going down there saying, "Hey, spare change, man. Got a job? I'll work for food, whatever." Dude, no, they don't want that. Mexico would consider that to be an act of fucking war. China would probably just hang them. They wouldn't even bother. They might even bother with the gallows. They might just shoot them, mow them all down. I mean, my God. Think of how other countries would handle that if the situation were reversed. They would be pissed. How would Singapore handle that? Singapore would they would go absolutely insane. They would be burning corpses on the streets, as a warning to others. They'd go full Vlad the Impaler there. My God. Yeah, this is the thing. It's like, yeah, so Americans have our own problems, and those poor people, those 3 million, let's say, poor people and homeless people, dude, those are supposed to be jobs that these people are taking. These are jobs they're supposed to be doing, not somebody else to do it cheaper from some other country. Like, well, but they won't do it. Okay, then that means your business model doesn't work. Either A, your business model doesn't work, or B, you need to find somebody else to work for you. Period. That's what that means. From a business standpoint, that's what that means. You don't get to go to the government and keep getting fucking bailed out. Which has been my biggest issue, has been the bailouts. Ever since that became a thing in 2007, 2008. That's what really, for the most part, I stayed apolitical for a long time. I hate politics. I hate politics on a level people can't even understand. I really hate politics. But that pissed me off because as a business owner, I'm watching that going, dude, I don't get bailed out. Every business deal I make, I either lose money or I make money on it. That's it. No one shows up and says, "Hey, Axel, let's print a bunch of money and bail you out." Dude, doesn't happen. No one's done that for me, and they won't do that for anybody else. It's only for a handful of people and it's always the same goddamn people that get bailed out over and over and over and over and over. And no, that's that for me. That was the end of it. Like, that's it. I hate everybody equally, and I never want to hear about free markets. I never want to hear about any of this bullshit again. Not because I don't agree with the philosophy. I 100% totally agree with the philosophy. I would love to have hard currency. I would love to have us exchanging gold coin with each other. That'd be great because then it keeps honest people honest. It's the truth, right? I mean, something that can't be counterfeited or printed out of nothing. But that's not what we have. We have this really horrible system that has made everything downstream of it a fucking scam. Everything's a scam now downstream of this. Even big companies. It's really sad. One company, I won't say the name because I still do business with them from time to time. But there's one big company that you know the name if I said it, that it's like, well, they're turning their business model into a scam. Like, why would you do this? You don't even have to do this. Why are you doing this? It's because you're not making enough money. That's all it is. And it's just pure greed. It's greed for the sake of greed.
Have you
It's
dug
not
too
like you're.
much into the question of, so there's this term that's been sort of become fashionable here in the last
Mhm.
few years, private equity, which is sort of
Yeah.
a new
I got contacted. I did a video on that. I got contacted. I did this video actually, not to interrupt, but just
yeah.
to answer you because you just made me think of that. About a month and a half ago or so, I got contacted, or my partner did. She got contacted by a private equity company wanting to purchase our company, and I said, okay, um, that's a first. Yeah, I'll listen to anything. I'm a businessman, so I'll listen to anything. But so we did this. They set up the Zoom meeting and so on, and they're telling me all this stuff. And basically, what they wanted, this private equity firm wanted to do, was they wanted to buy us on paper for like $100, and then they would control the company. And then what they would do, we would still run everything, but they would control it on paper. And what they would do is they would make the asset price look bigger than it really was, and then they would package our company along with every other company that they were trying to buy up in the same sector, and then sell it like 3 years from now. And then in 3 years from now, we would get this big payoff. And I'm like, dude, that's a scam. I, you're just contacting me to tell me about a scam. I can. I've been doing this for 36 years, man. What you're describing is a scam. It's a con.
Yeah.
You're just, and I know what you're going to do. You're going to load my company up with a bunch of debt that it doesn't need because we run zero debt. We have everything we have is on 30-day payables. Period. We carry nothing. So we are a cash business and have been since the day we opened. And so you want to load us up with a bunch of debt like you did with Red Lobster, like you did with all these other companies that you did this kind of stuff with, and then like, oh, let the company go bankrupt and then just take all the assets and then sell them off. This is yeah, this is just it's just greed.
Yeah.
Greed for the sake of greed.
It's rape. It's predatory rape of the economy.
It is, and there's really no reason for it. You can have I'm not saying that there isn't a time and a place, for people to run their business and everything, but like this is at a certain point, this just becomes just pure greed. There's a great scene in the movie American Gangster. I don't know if you ever saw it or not, with Denzel Washington. It's a
No.
great movie. It really is. It's a wonderful movie. And he plays a businessman who's in the heroin business. Now, regardless of whether I agree or disagree with any what he's doing, that's got nothing to do with it. He's running it like a real business. He actually runs it like, and one of his guys starts cutting all of his dope and everything. And he's like, no, no, no. He says, dude, that's a product that we're selling. You're changing the product, which means that that's not my product. There's already, and where I'm going with that is he was pointing out there's already so much. You're already making so much money. You're already making a fortune doing this. Anything more than that is just plain greed and stupidity. You're already making all kinds of money. What else are you gonna do?
Right.
You already have everything you could possibly ever want. Anything more than that is just being stupid. There's no reason. It's the argument that I've made on many occasions. Wealth maxes out at a certain point of wealth. It really kind of, your cornflakes are not going to taste any different tomorrow morning with another $1 billion.
No.
If you've already got a bunch of money, it's like, well, okay, so another 100,000 isn't going to change. Like, what's that going to do for you? Nothing. And that's the truth with all wealth. Even Andrew Tate said that. Even Andrew Tate, of all people, he said something very profound, and I happen to agree with. I've been saying this for many years, but it was very profound, and I agreed with it. He's like, yeah, he says, at a certain point, it doesn't matter. Money kind of just stops mattering to you at a certain point. At what matters at that point, after that, is what you're doing. What are you doing here? Because if you're just trying to just only make money to the exclusion of everything else, why the hell are you even here? There's so many other things you could be doing. You're not very creative, I mean,
That's true unless you're at the bottom end of the income scale like me, and like a lack of it becomes a
it's
problem.
exactly that's the thing is that, so for my position is like, what if you had if I gave you $1 billion today, right? Just cash, you just had $1 billion, just poof, it just appears in your bank account. What do most normal people do? They go, man, I'd pay my house off. I would do. You might buy a nicer house. You might buy a boat. You might, all the little trinkets and doodads, sure.
Help out a
But
bunch of other people.
right, and at a certain point, it kind of just maxes out, and you're like, okay, well, I don't really need the rest of that. The other 900 million or five or whatever. No, you start actually just moving it around and everything. Frankly, a lot of people give stuff away. That'd be what I would end up doing. I'd end up frankly, giving a lot of it away because at a certain point, mm, you're kind of taken care of, and another 100 million will do nothing for you. But if you owe a bunch of money, which is this is the contention that I have. So the conspiracy side of this is me is I think that these people owe a bunch of money. That's how they act. I think that all these politicians, I think, and some of these billionaires, these fake billionaires running around there, I think they owe a bunch of money. I think they've borrowed so much money that they have no way to pay it back. And so now they're just doing whatever they're told by whomever they owe all this money to. Because it certainly seems, because like you look at a lot of the stuff they do, none of it makes any sense, but they do it
Yeah.
anyway. It's like, well, it's so the way I put it is like, if you want to know who rules you, find out who your ruler is, and then find out who they owe money to, because that's who actually rules you. And that's been my contention, just watching all of this sort of fall apart around us, unfortunately. And in the trucking sector, it just seems to be it's really a shame because it used to be the thing that a lot of men could go do. It's sort of like waitressing, right? It's that old Harvey Keitel waitressing conversation in Reservoir Dogs, where he's talking about he's making the case that, like, there's always that one job that women could go do if they really needed some money outside of like stripping and
Yeah.
OF, and you go be a waitress, and because you could do it. And truck driving, which is millions of guys, millions, okay, actually it's tens of millions, I think, could go do that if you as long as you weren't a drunk and you weren't a junkie and you actually knew what you were doing and you could be trained and you could be somewhat logical, so you were average intelligence. You didn't have to be You didn't have to be a genius. You could just be average intelligence, like any of us out here, just average,
Yeah.
and you could make a reasonable living in your own country and support a family. What's wrong with that? There's nothing socialist about that.
No.
Like and again, especially if you allow the market to correct. Because if the markets were to correct right now, if you got rid of all those illegals right now, what would freight rates be?
Oh
$4
man.
a mile,
They're
five
all
eighty
they're
five a mile. Oh my God.
in certain areas they're already starting to come up a little bit because of the
Yeah.
enforcement stuff and some of these people being scared to go home. But it's also we just came out of Christmas and it's also this little lull period and it's sort of to be determined how much of that is actually influencing the
Right.
price. But like the scale of it, I don't think people understand just how many people we're talking about here. Like JB Hunt did their own study about the impact of immigrant, migrant, refugee, illegal drivers on the trucking industry, right? Like JB Hunt paid very smart people to study this. So it's not
Hmm.
just Gord yelling on the internet. It's not just
Right. Right.
Shannon from ATU. It's not Axel from financial
Right.
physics. They paid
Right.
nerds a lot of money to study this. And those nerds said minimum 600,000 of these people are in the system right now.
That's insane.
There are only
That's insane.
depending on market fluctuations and how you classify a truck driving job, whether it just requires a CDL or it's actually over the road trucking,
Hmm.
somewhere between 1.8 million and 3.5 million jobs. 3.5 at the high end, 1.8 at the low, right?
That's a
600
lot.
if we take that low number, 1.8 million,
Hmm.
600,000 people is 1/3 of the entire workforce.
Yeah.
They replaced they displaced 600,000 Americans out of jobs.
Yeah.
One
And
third of the industry and got away with it.
yeah. To say nothing of construction, to say nothing of all the other sectors that are being beat up by this as well. It's everywhere. It's pretty ubiquitous. And it's been really horrible. And like I said, it's not something you would want to do to your younger people, because younger people are the ones who are supposed to do some of these jobs, and again, where they develop their work ethic. That's just like, it's the
You're
young
not
kid
a
who's like 18.
you are not a full and complete human being until you have that part of it too. Because work ethic is
Yeah,
just another way of saying your ability and your willingness to contribute to the rest of the community. A
or
job
at least feed yourself,
or
if
feed
nothing
yourself,
else.
right?
Yeah.
You are not a whole human being if you don't have that. I'm sorry, it
Yeah.
sounds harsh, but it's the truth.
No, no, that's right. And I mean, like, if you're in the wild, out in the wilderness somewhere, you have to learn how to feed yourself and find water and so on. No different. Well, in a civilized society, if you want to call us that, yeah, it just means you do something and then you can be able to be productive. And in so doing of being productive, you're able to actually make a living off of it, or at least be able to sustain your own existence and not be a burden to everybody else. And when you take that kind of stuff away from your own people, well, that's a problem. Again, these are your own Americans. These are people that are here that want to do stuff. So to replace them, and this, of course, this is unfortunate where they talk about the replacement thing and they say, well, it's a conspiracy theory. I don't know, dude. It looks pretty obvious to me. I don't know if there's a conspiracy about it. Obviously, they're replacing them. Now, you can make the case that maybe it's for racial reasons or otherwise. I don't really care one way or the other on that. The fact is, it's happening.
Yep.
I mean, they are doing it, and I think it's more for financial reasons personally. I think that's really the bottom line. I think is the bottom line, and I think that really it has to do more with, well, we can get cheap labor somewhere else.
Yeah, they have to keep the casino going
Yeah,
somehow and they have to reduce
that's
the
it.
labor inputs. Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, because I mean, if you have, if wages start coming up, like one of the biggest problems, or that exists is something called an overheated economy, and an overheat for anybody wondering, all an overheated economy means that's econobabble for poor people are paying off too much debt. That's all that means. It means that because the US dollar is based on debt. It's a debt-based currency. So in other words, in order for a dollar to exist, somebody has to be willing to borrow a dollar first. So if all the poor people pay off all their debt, well, that's a bit of a problem with a debt-based currency, isn't it? It makes that currency worth less and less on the world scale. So it's great for the poor person who pays off all their debt. It's not great for the government. It's not great for the bankers who have to gauge this currency against all the other worthless garbage currencies out there. So That, and it's one of the reasons why I think that they cannot have wages coming up. I think that's the big one, because again, what I think Americans now, probably more than ever, it's weird, want to save money, right? Like that wasn't a thing when I was growing up. People just spent what they made.
Yeah.
We all did. And that's not the case now. Now it's okay. Yeah, I want to save my money. I want to invest it. I want to do something. Like, okay, that's really good. That's very noble in my opinion, because savings is very important to have. Now there's a time to spend too,
Yeah.
but savings, to be able to for your own benefit is really good. And now you're making it to the point where people are in debt and they can't save anything. Well, that's great for the bankers. They love that. But that's not great for the people. So you want to have people do that. So yeah, I mean your wages need to come up quite a bit. It's either wages come up or prices come down, right? And that's how it works. But they can't allow prices to come down for reasons that we talked about earlier in the session, where it's like, okay, yeah, if that stuff comes down, well, okay, then all those people trying to launder all that money, for example, in Canada, now they're going to start losing money, aren't they?
Yeah.
All the boomers that took out all those HELOCs on all those retarded banks that lent out all that money on at the peak of this market, who lent out trillions of dollars to buy into all this real estate. Well, now all those banks are on the hook for that, aren't they? And they
Yeah.
should be. And all those landlord bros who pumped all these artificial numbers up, now they owe all this money and there's no way to pay it back, which is what should happen. That's called bankruptcy. It's in the name.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy. It's what's supposed to happen. And your other people who didn't do that kind of stuff are supposed to benefit from that. They buy up all the assets of the companies and all the stuff out of bankruptcy, and then they go make profitable businesses out of it. It's really simple, and when you really think about it, but that's just not allowed. We cannot have the poor people out there. Oh my God, if they start making too much money, they'll pay off debt, and then they get all uppity, and then they start talking about gun rights. And they start talking about being, freedom, and they want vacations, and no, 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 no. We can't have that. We need people working for, it's from sun up to sundown, and never having any kind of actual life, and certainly not owning property, which is another big bugaboo of mine. But that's for another day. But
Yeah, there's so many different economic rabbit holes we could chase down. Um,
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, the first 19 sessions I did, which that's where the name financial physics came from. It was 19 sessions that I did on YouTube that I titled financial physics, because I didn't know what else to call it, because it's really kind of what it came down to. It was just using the physics of money, and which is because money is just energy. That's all that is. I mean, it's just an it's just a way that we can transfer and save energy. That's all it really
you want
is.
to hear a cool little story?
Yeah.
So I went to this like podcaster quasi intellectual party thing organized down in Texas a few years ago, and one of the guys that was there was Hotep Jesus. You heard of him? The
I have
Hoteps? Yeah.
actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Hotep Jesus is down there, and I have never talked to the guy, never met him. I've listened to his podcast a few times. He's hilarious. He's out there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
anyway,
I saw the first video I saw. I'll tell you about the first video I saw of him later on.
I'm standing there, and like it's a fully catered event. We're having food, and I asked him about, like I said, you're very pro Bitcoin. I says, what,
Mhm,
besides the details you discuss on your show, he's like, why are you so pro Bitcoin? And he says to me, he says, Bitcoin is energy. I'm like,
mhm,
okay. He goes, well, it takes energy to produce Bitcoin. Yep.
mhm.
And he says, what are you? I don't know, I'm a human being. He says, you're energy. Okay. He says, you're Bitcoin. We are all Bitcoin. I don't know if he was stoned off his ass or what, but like,
Probably, but that's a way of looking at it, I suppose. That's a very existentialist view to take, but yeah, I mean, in terms of like, well, think of it like this. I mean, your energy, the energy that makes up who you are, is finite by definition. I mean, it doesn't make any difference if you live, one day or 10,000 years as a human being. It's going to come to an end. And so by definition, all of your time is finite.
right.
And that was like, so I want to say it's like in those original 19 videos, I actually explained that to people. It was really for younger people to understand the idea that you are finite and your time is finite. So therefore, if you're trading your time for infinite dollars that can be just conjured at the whim of whoever, that's a problem. You because your time is finite, you need to be paid in like kind. That's it. Now, so it wasn't like a pro Bitcoin commercial I was doing. You could apply that to any hard currency for that matter.
Right.
And I'm willing to listen to anybody on that. But it just happened to be that Bitcoin was part of the conversation as it was. But gold fits that too. Your physical gold. It's more fungible, which is true. Gold is more fungible. It is more private. That's true. But it's a physical component. It's a physical element, which means that it has to be physically moved, as opposed to it can be digitally moved or digitally stored. And no matter how big your vault is or how deep your vault is buried in the ground, someone's going to go grave robbing someday and take your gold. So that's kind of how that works. And so you take the good with the bad. But yeah, that's actually that's a good way of putting that though. But it is a bit existentialist for my liking. But it is funny. It's a funny way of doing that. The first time I saw Hotep Jesus was he was at Starbucks or something like that, and it was on a video, and he's like, "Hey, I want my free coffee, for Black History Month or something like that." And he basically bullied them into giving him a free coffee, and just he was proving the point. Like these people are crazy. Like what the hell? It was really funny. It
Uh,
was really funny.
well, no, and the point you just made about the time thing, right? Like,
Yeah,
wages are an expression of the value of your time. Time
correct.
is a finite resource. We're only here for a
Yeah,
short amount of it. And I want to bring this back to the trucking thing,
yeah.
which is, we talk about all these issues and why they happen. And another one of those issues that undergirds this is the utilization of time. You've sat
Mhm.
around at shippers and receivers waiting forever and ever to get
Oh
loaded or
my
unloaded.
God. Oh
There
my
is
God. Yeah.
there's been studies on this, and I quote them in my book. And I interviewed the guy for my podcast. His name is David Carell. He's a data scientist with MIT. He ran a sub school at MIT called Freight Labs, and they did
Oh,
a
okay.
they did a wide ranging study on the utilization of truck drivers' time. Did a number of papers about this, and then they gave a presentation to the Biden administration saying, "Look, man, like according to our data, 40% of United States trucking capacity is wasted sitting in detention. You don't
At
have a
least.
driver. You do not have a driver shortage if you get these trucks moving. You do not have a supply chain crisis if you get these trucks moving. You do not have backed up ports if you get these trucks moving. Like all of this other crap you guys are talking about is nonsense. Just get the trucks moving. Do whatever it is you need to do to tell companies to stop wasting drivers' time. Either they have more efficient booking processes, hire more forklift drivers, do whatever it is. But this problem here is mostly about time. And over and
Mhm.
above that, these drivers are not being paid for it. Most truck drivers don't get paid for
Correct.
detention, right? That's your
It's like
time.
pulling teeth, man. It's like pull every time.
It,
Every time I have to charge for detention, it's like pulling teeth to get them
nobody
paid
wants
for it.
to everybody will acknowledge you could sit and talk with a load broker or with their shipper who's their customer as a person
Hmm.
man to man and say we all have a limited amount of time on planet earth and
Hmm.
time is this resource and it's invaluable. Why are you wasting mine? And they'll say, well,
Hmm.
that's not up to me for pay for it. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
pay, right?
Nope.
Everybody will acknowledge the problem. Nobody wants to pay for the problem. Well, how about solving it? We don't have to have this discussion about the problem if you get the fucking truck unloaded in 20 minutes like you should,
It's
right?
usually a negotiation problem that
You
at least
know?
what I've found. What I've found in my experience is a negotiation problem. The people, um, the salespeople, of course, the salespeople, most of them don't drive trucks. They know nothing about it. They shouldn't be in that position
No.
at all, but they are. They go to big XYZ mega company, and XYZ mega company has an employee who negotiates with them. Somebody not even at the C level, but just somebody at like management. And what they do is they don't know how to negotiate properly. How I negotiate that stuff goes like this. How if I send my trucks here, how long are you going to take to load and unload these trucks each time? So I can give you a proper bid. Because and of course, what's he going to say? He's going to, oh, we'll have them out of here 15, 20 minutes. They're all going to say that because
Yeah.
they don't want to pay for that. So 15, 20 minutes. Okay, great. 15, 20 minutes. So if I said an hour, that should be more than adequate time for you. Like that should be any, oh yeah, absolutely, man. Okay, so for every minute after that hour, I'm going to bill you $200 per minute for every minute. after that hour. And then it becomes, well, hold on. No, you hold on. Because now you just revealed to me that you lied to me and you don't know what you're talking about. First of all, I'm automatically going to be suspect that you even know what the hell you're doing at this point. Second, I want to talk to the people that are on the floor that are actually loading these goddamn trucks because clearly you don't know what the hell you're doing. Because if they tell me it takes 3.5 hours to get trucks in and out of here, well, I need to know about that, don't I? So let's start over again. Hi, my name's Axel. I'm from so and so trucking company. Let's start over. If I send my trucks here, how long are you going to take to actually load and unload my trucks? That's what it needs to be. Nobody negotiates like that, because they're afraid to. They're afraid to negotiate because the salespeople want to get closed. They just want to get their commission and go fuck off and go do cocaine. They don't care about the driver who's going to sit there for 4.5 hours waiting for some fucking illegals, dicking a dog on the fucking forklifts, not loading the trucks because they're all paid by the hour, which of course is always the problem, right? You have hourly employees versus people who are not paid by the hour. That's always the sticking point. Now, by contrast, if you paid those guys, by the truckload, hey, you guys get paid X amount of money for each truck that you load, no matter how long it takes. Well, that changes the deal, doesn't it?
Yeah, man, that
Uh,
forklift's going to be burning the tires off it.
yeah, now those guys are going to be in a hurry to get shit done. Because for them it doesn't make any difference whether it takes them this long or that long. It's like, hey, you want to go on a 2 hour break? No problem. If there's no trucks to load, go on a 2 hour break. I don't care. But and you're still being paid, but you're being paid to load the trucks. You're not being paid to, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is just kind of how this stuff works, and
Conflicting incentives.
it is. There's no incentive structure for most of the illegals that are driving those forklifts. Again, I'm in Texas. Most of the people driving, they don't speak English, dude. They're most really. It's just the truth, and especially when it's like palletized freight that goes on the back of a flatbed and from like a materials company, most of those guys, I mean, and even the foremen don't even speak English in a lot of cases. A lot of times I have to go find somebody in the office who speaks English. And yeah, I mean, you could sit someplace for hours on end waiting to get loaded. Colorado, up in Golden, Colorado, there's that beer company that I don't remember which one it is, Coors or whatever it is, that's up there,
Yeah.
and there's always this gigantic line of trucks, of reefer trucks, this like massive line it's like four abreast and it goes back like a half a mile of all these trucks, and there's no way those are getting out of there in 2 hours, man. There's no way that's happening.
No.
They're going to be there forever. So yeah, it's just it is inefficient. And it is a huge waste of time. It's been a constant problem of mine. Yeah, you're right. 40% is probably about right. Probably 40% of my time in the truck is sitting waiting for somebody to run a crane or the forklift guy or whatever. It's
Something, yeah. There's some process that's not functioning as it should.
yeah.
Speaking of time,
Occasionally you run into some good ones, but it's rare.
yeah. Speaking of time, sir, I've kept you here for over an
Yeah,
hour
no,
and
no. I
40
I actually
minutes.
do have things to do. It is
Yeah.
Saturday and I do have things to do. So
Yeah, me too.
um
Well, Axel, this has been fascinating. I'm gonna have to get you back on, man. This has been a really
yeah.
great show. We could sit and do this for hours and hours and
Yeah,
do the Joe
no.
Rogan, Alex Jones thing. But I really appreciate it. How do people
Anytime,
find?
anytime.
Yeah, how do people find you? Where are you at?
So anybody, if you follow at your own risk, because I'm all over the place, and I have a weird sense of humor. So you follow at your own risk, but it's financial fizz phys on Twitter. So because Twitter has a cutoff of characters, so it's financial and then phys. So at Financial Fizz on Twitter or Financial Physics on TikTok. There's no numbers or anything. There's like seven. There's like I think they've gotten rid of a bunch of them. There was like 700 copycat accounts on TikTok of my material. At
Wow.
one, I was getting notices from people. In fact, many of them had more followers than I had. Like it's weird. You'd have one account that had like 100,000 plus followers or something like that on TikTok. And it wasn't even my account. It was somebody just copying my stuff and putting it on their account. But it's just regular financial physics over on TikTok, and then financial physics 7451 on YouTube. So I mean, it's for people that want to follow me. So in terms of activity, I'm probably the most active on Twitter just because it's easy. it's easier for me to compose a really simple, brief thought on something as opposed to trying to, get the camera out and do like a full video.
Yeah.
I try to save those. I try to save those for topics that I think need to be fleshed out. Like, it's because it's very different. It's very dry to read something. It's very different if you're seeing a video and somebody's explaining something to you. It's just a very different feel entirely.
Yeah. Which is why I only read and make podcasts because I'm not very good at videos.
No, 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 no. I know. Neither am I. I trip over my words all the time. I just leave it in there though, only
Yeah.
because if for no other reason, just to show other people that like, hey, um, you know,
We
you
all
don't have to
make
be perfect.
mistakes. We're
Yeah,
all
I mean,
human.
I make mistakes all the time, man. I constantly. In fact, it's an annoyance of mine, you could say. So,
All right. Well, Axel, thanks very much for coming back. And maybe next time we'll dive a little bit more into the like details of trucking stuff. We didn't even really talk about you selling your truck. I mean, although we got into the reasons behind it, but
that's really it. That's really the big reasons was just because of all of that. I liked my truck, and I actually felt really bad about it because I put a lot of my soul into it. Because I had a 379 flat top, which is the truck that I wanted for a long time, and with a Cat C16 engine. So I had a very desirable truck, which is why it sold so quickly. I mean, I knew it would sell almost instantly, and but I worked very hard on it. I put a lot of my soul into that truck. I put a lot of work, physical work into that. So it was a bittersweet moment, but yeah. So we'll talk about that more on the next go around.
yeah, no. I got a book coming out, and my life's going to be real busy here soon, so I can't guarantee a date. But we'll
I'll be
we'll
around. You
we'll
you got all my contact info.
yeah, we'll definitely get you back on. Thanks very much, and way of the road.